Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Otherwise, I'll do this. Satoshi Kon's first feature film, Perfect Blue, released in 1997, is considered a milestone for Japanese animation. Finally, a serious anime for adults that isn't about aliens or robots or hoping senpai notices me. It's a film grounded in reality, in spite of the disjointed dreamlike structure. The film is very loosely based on Yoshikazu Takeuchi's novel, Perfect Blue, Kanzen Hentai. Kanzen Hentai means complete metamorphosis or total pervert. Please don't ask for further explanation of Japanese puns. At first, the film seems absolutely opaque, something that cannot be explained. It's been called the Japanese animation version of a David Lynch film. Like Lynch's films, it is not made up of random weirdness with no overarching meaning. The film is filled with brilliant symbolism, and Kon himself acknowledges this.
カメラが上がるんですね。そういうようなことなんですよ。
Okay, the symbolism isn't all brilliant, but the point is that the sex and violence and disturbing images are all there for a reason. Kon is trying to make a serious point about uncomfortable subjects.
話しづらいですか?
いや、勉強になります。
The film explores cyberstalking and toxic fan culture, which makes it downright clairvoyant for a film from 1997. On the surface, it seems to be about exploitation, misogyny in show business, and how obsession can turn to violence. But is that all it is? What if it's an allegory for something bigger? What if these fantastic events aren't hallucinations, but abstractions?
That makes sense?
Not one bit.
Don't worry, we'll go through it step by step. If Satoshi Kon were alive today, I'm sure he would say that analyzing the film helps one appreciate it more.
あまりにも分解しすぎると、楽しめなくなってしまう。
Must have been a bad English translation. Speaking of which, I am using the English dub instead of the English subtitles. The dub version is a different translation. The dialogue is more realistic and conversational and therefore preferable to me. Additionally, I will often read some of the original Nihongo in order to clear up some confusion caused by the translation. So let us peel back the many layers of meaning in Perfect Blue and find out whether or not we can truly believe Eri Ochiai when she says,
Illusions can't come to reality.
The fact that I am asking this question should cause many of you to infer that the answer is no. If you have seen my other essays, you know that I dislike the strategy of segregating scenes into real and imaginary. The problem is that, if everything weird goes into the dream category, you will eventually put the entire movie into the dream category, and now what? If you have seen my video essays about The Shining, you have likely seen other essays that attempt to explain the film in terms of all the ghosts being figments of Jack's imagination or figments of Wendy's imagination. These ideas have been debunked in my estimation because you have to selectively ignore a lot of the text of the film to land on those interpretations. In my essay on Lost Highway, I debunked the common interpretation that the film is happening in the imagination of the protagonist, Fred Madison. Presuming an unreliable narrator can become a tool for confirmation bias. This scene supports your thesis? Oh, that's real. This scene contradicts your thesis? Oh, that's just someone's dream. In Perfect Blue, when the phantom Mimarin, aka virtual Mima, comes out of Mima's computer and then dances away on the streetlights, our instinct is to say, well, that's something that cannot happen in reality, so it must be Mima's imagination. The problem is that, yes, a phantom girl cannot exist in reality, but this is a movie. One of the biggest problems with assuming that the fantastic are hallucinations had by otherwise realistic people is that we have to pick who is having the hallucination. Mr. Mimania appears to be imagining the same Mimarin as Mima. In the climactic scene, Rumi believes that she is Mimarin, and we see the real Rumi in a mirror but the fake Mimarin in actuality. A viewer typically assumes that Rumi has gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and now thinks that she is Mimarin, so we, the audience, see her as Mimarin. However, it appears that Rumi and Mima are having the same hallucination. That's at least 3 characters sharing the same delusion. It's possible for multiple people to have the same delusion, share a delusional disorder or mass psychogenic illness, but for 3 people to have the same specific hallucination, even when isolated from each other, that's just not how delusion works. But let's ignore what is psychologically impossible and look at what is physically impossible. When Mimarin floats through the air and only Mima can see her, we could assume that Mimarin is a figment of Mima's imagination. But when Rumi is chasing Mima, what's going on? If this is the real Rumi chasing Mima, and we only see her as Mimarin because we are seeing the shared delusion, how does Rumi jump off the buildings and catch up to Mima? Mimarin is fast and free from the restraints of gravity, but we cannot assume that the older, bulkier Rumi is suddenly a parkour expert. The shared delusion explanation creates more questions than it answers. Before I continue, let me be clear that Kon himself acknowledged that the film cannot be decoded this way.
Many viewers have found it difficult to figure out which of the later scenes are real and which takes place in Mima's head or maybe someone else's head. Is it possible to work it out through repeated viewing?
If you saw the film many times in order to distinguish between objective reality and the main character's subjective experience, I think the film's flavor would disappear. So long as you accept that it's meant to be inexplicable, that's fine.
Is there a totally natural explanation for everything that happens in the film?
Some scenes lead from sequences of reality to illusion. It is not the object of the film to distinguish them.
What about when Murano, the photographer, is murdered? We see Mima murder him, and later we assume that either Mr. Mimania or Rumi killed him, and someone imagined that it was Mima. Who imagined it? Did Rumi or Mimania imagine that they are Mima or Mimarin? Why would Murano see someone else's hallucination? If it was Rumi, Murano would say, "Hey, it's Rumi in a pizza delivery uniform," and that would be the shortest-lived murder plot in movie history. Because the video projector is showing an image of Mima, it has been asserted that the projector is projecting the face of Mima on the real killer. That's not how projectors work. Even if you assume it's a metaphor and someone is metaphorically projecting the identity of Mima or Mimarin onto someone else, it still doesn't work. Who's doing the projecting, and why are we, the audience, seeing it differently than it happened? In Perfect Blue, we do have a concrete device for indicating that some events are real and some are not. There is a story within the story. The TV show Double Bind exists within the movie Perfect Blue, and our protagonist, Mima Kirigoe, plays a character, Yoko Takakura, whose story starts to parallel the story of Mima. Several times during Perfect Blue, the film does a fake-out and follows the story of Double Bind, but lets us believe that it's Perfect Blue, reality, for a second. This is typically interpreted as Mima losing touch with reality and starting to think that she is Yoko. We see a scene from Double Bind played out twice. First as if it's real and Mima has succumbed to homicidal psychosis, and a second time as if it's fake and Yoko, the character, has succumbed to homicidal psychosis.
That's right, I'm an actress. That's right, I'm a model.
She thinks she's some new, young, up-and-coming actress named Mima Kirigoe.
All those crimes took place when she believed herself to be some other persona, a different personality. Yoko Takakura, the original persona, is nothing more than a made-up character in a drama for her. By doing this, she salvaged her own heart. The original persona, Yoko Takakura, no longer exists. By killing and later becoming her sister, the top model, she salvaged her own heart.
The film tricks us into thinking that we have arrived at a logical ending and Mima has imagined everything. However, this is the twist ending to the story within the story, not the story. Why do we see a hybrid version where it is Mima and not Yoko whose story has a twist ending? It is because there isn't a real difference between Perfect Blue and Double Bind. Let us throw away all the pretense of sharp divisions between fantasy and reality. Forget about hallucinations. Forget about reality versus TV show. If Mimarin symbolizes some kind of desire to remain a pop idol, then can't we say that Mima represents the desire to move on? That Rumi represents refusal to move on? Yes, we're talking about symbolism. The whole movie is symbolic. But what is symbolized by what? To answer that question, we should start with a very important question. What exactly is a pop idol? Yeah, why should we care? The assumption of Perfect Blue is that it is a big deal, a really big deal, if a so-called pop idol tries her hand at acting. Transitioning from one kind of entertainer to another is difficult, but it shouldn't transform your world into a fractured nightmare. We hear this fan of Mima say this.
Metamorphosis, huh?
Metamorphosis? A radical physical and qualitative transformation? Not merely a lateral career change, but a metamorphosis? The word describes a man becoming a cockroach, or a man becoming a green rage monster.
When David Banner grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs.
The word translated as metamorphosis is dappi,
Duppy.
the Japanese word for when a reptile sheds its skin when maturing. This is a world where a singer becoming an actress is an extreme transformation.
Bye-bye, Mima the pop idol. The pop idol image is suffocating me.
She's done with being a pop idol.
She's done with it? She can't do a little bit of acting and a little bit of singing? It's such a strict binary. She has to sing or act, but she absolutely cannot do both? The film places an unnatural severity on this decision, and we need to investigate that. So it is a pop idol. We don't say pop idol so casually in American English, but because the term is used as a formal term in Perfect Blue, we repeat it. However, in Japanese, pop idol means something specific, even though it's just two English words transliterated. It's not merely a pop singer, it's a tightly controlled artificial personality. First of all, pop idols are not allowed to date or have any romantic relationships. They are supposed to be innocent and childlike, even if, like the 21-year-old Mima, they are literally adults. In other words, pop idol means virgin. In Perfect Blue, the antonym of pop idol is always something indicating dishonorable promiscuity. When Tadakoro announces that Mima will be performing in an explicit rape scene, Rumi says something that is really a non sequitur.
Mima is a pop idol.
I just told Shibuya that she was pulling out from the pop idol scene.
You have to stop being a pop idol to play such a role. You have to abandon the pretense of innocence to be involved in any kind of sexual contact, consensual or otherwise. Listen to the language used by Mimarin when she describes not being a pop idol.
You're no longer a pop idol. You're a filthy woman now, like a slut. Nobody cares for you anymore. You're tarnished and you're filthy. Mima is a pop idol. And you're just a dirty old imposter.
This is the metamorphosis. You are an innocent girl, a virgin, when you are a pop idol, but an actress is filthy, dirty, tarnished. A pop idol is a virgin, but an actress is not. As an actress, she no longer has to keep up the image of being a virgin. She performs in a rape scene and allows Morando to take nude photographs of her. In a patriarchal society, a girl is expected to be a virgin and a woman is expected to be sexually available. Once you realize this, the central metaphor of Perfect Blue is finally clear. The metamorphosis from pop idol to actress represents the transition from girl to woman. Kon himself acknowledged this in an interview with Tom Mess of Midnight Eye.
Perfect Blue was seen as a comment on the pop idol phenomenon. Was comment or criticism one of your own main intentions?
No. To reveal behind-the-scenes secrets about the entertainment world was never my intention. I simply wanted to show the process of a young girl maturing, reborn as a mature being as a result of that. That's what I wanted to describe.
I'm not talking about the basic biology of a female growing up. I'm talking about how a girl first navigates the constrictions of the patriarchy, expecting you to be a virgin, and then has to make the turn to being expected to be sexually available. Both are forms of control. The ultimate manifestation of the latter is, of course, rape, something dealt with openly in Perfect Blue. But let's remember that it is not real rape. Mima is acting, but non-consensual sexual violence is evoked, and we, the real audience, cannot ignore that. This is what I mean when I say that the separation between fantasy and reality is blurry. Tadakoro and Rumi are absolutely mortified. You would think they were witnessing a real rape. They kind of are. Remember that the men who fantasize about Mima and Mimarin being a virgin are sexualizing her. Mr. Mamania is obsessed with Mima remaining a pop idol and therefore remaining a virgin. This is a form of control. He even fantasizes about owning Mima. The symbolism is so obvious, I feel silly even pointing it out. Women are expected to conform to the rules of men, and if those rules are impossible to follow, well, that's the woman's fault. If a girl goes insane navigating these impossible demands, that's not the problem of men. Men do not take responsibility for the psychosis created by coping with the patriarchy while growing into adulthood. However, that is what we're seeing when we watch Perfect Blue. Satoshi Kon kind of gives away the game with this quote from his interview.
でこの後、まあ部屋をめちゃくちゃにすると。それはとにかくこの映画の中で語られる部屋っていうのは、そのキャラクターそのもの
内面
ですから、要するに精神がめちゃくちゃになってる、自分でもめちゃくちゃにしたいっていう、そういう意味ですね、これはね。
So yeah, the physical locations represent states of being. This is why there is the real Mima's room, simply the room where Mima lives, and the fake Mima's room, the subjective construct that exists outside of Mima's control and where the fish are still alive. It's easier to believe in the film if we take this symbolic approach. If we take the duplicate room literally, then Rumi had to create a perfect duplicate of Mima's room. You can say, yeah, Rumi is just that obsessive. But it makes more sense that the room symbolizes an attempt to counterfeit a person or a person's feelings. So let's go one step further and assume that the characters are symbolic. If you buy my argument that the movie is about navigating the patriarchy while transitioning to womanhood, then Mima represents the girl who tries to become a woman in a world where men control sexuality. In fact, we don't even need to read Mima as a real person. Perhaps she's an aspect of a real woman, a generalized version of a girl becoming a woman. Now we can understand her doppelganger, Mimarin. Mimarin is determined to remain a pop idol, a virgin. Mimarin represents the girl who remains a girl.
I'll never change. Not a bit.
Mimarin is the girl aspect of Mima that would normally cease to exist when a girl becomes a woman. But in this fantasy world, she continues to exist. Now let's look at Rumi, who is a literal adult woman and also a former pop idol, meaning that she has succeeded in the metamorphosis from girl to woman.
Times have changed since Rumi Hidaka was a working pop idol.
I know that.
Perhaps Rumi was a successful pop idol and she aged out. Likely she gained weight, as pop idols are typically waifish thin. The fact that she is trying to get Mima to remain a pop idol means that she is aligned with Mimarin before we even understand that they are associated with each other. Rumi represents the desire of a woman to return to being a girl. This is a very important distinction. Mimarin represents the impossible state of remaining a girl, but Rumi represents a woman who wants to be a girl again, and such people do exist even if their dream is impossible. This is why Mimarin is a fantasy character who floats through the air, and Rumi is a more realistic character who looks like a real adult woman. Mimarin represents the impossible dream of women represented by Rumi. Pencil-thin Mimarin floats and full-figured Rumi walks normally, as if literal mass is related to the realness of a character. Rei and Yukiko are successful pop idols. In fact, it seems that they are more successful without Mima in the group. Mima leaves Cham, but it seems that Mimarin remains in the group. This symbolizes the regret a woman feels after leaving girlhood behind, the possibility that she made a mistake. Rei and Yukiko represent the hypothetical success a woman could have by remaining a girl. Pay attention to the lyrics when Rei and Yukiko are singing. They are singing a song explicitly about finding happiness in remaining a girl rather than becoming a woman. Everyone is confused when Mimarin joins the concert when Cham is a duet. Is this Mr. Mamania's dream? Mima's dream? No. Mimarin is the hypothetical forever girl version of Mima, so of course she is going to remain in the pop idol group with the girls who remain girls. The only major female character remaining is Eri Ochiai, who seems to be a successful actress and therefore a successful woman.
Eri Ochiai is a great actress after all. She's a different person, so completely involved when the camera's rolling.
A good actress, an adult woman, is someone who can successfully pretend to be someone else. She is someone who can conform to society's expectations. It's no secret that Mima looks up to Eri, so Eri represents the woman that Mima wishes to become. So the woman characters represent different aspects of the female psyche when transitioning to adulthood. What about the male characters? They are the voices that demand conformity from woman. Tadakoro is determined to transition Mima from girl to woman, meaning that he wants her to become sexually available.
Mr. Tadakoro, you were saying something about Mima's next job?
Oh yeah, it's great. A starring role in a video movie. There happens to be a few smutty scenes, but what are you gonna do?
Poor Tadakoro. He may as well have a red Starfleet shirt on and be 2 days from retirement. Shibuya writes a rape scene for Mima. Mima wasn't supposed to be a major character in Double Bind, but either the urging of Tadakoro or Mima's acting skill prompted Shibuya to make her the culprit in a surprise ending that he seems to have made up on the spot. Or maybe Shibuya put Mima's character into the rape scene as a sort of sexual control by proxy. Murano, the photographer, gets Mima to strip for some sexy photos. This is not hard to figure out at all.
That photographer, he's known for getting people to strip.
The fact that Murano gets people to strip indicates that Mima's sexual accessibility isn't completely consensual. So, the complete gamut of men coercing adult women to be sexually available is represented by these men. Wanting adult women to be sexually available is considered a mainstream urge, so they are all normal-looking men. Wanting to sexually control girls is not mainstream, so Mr. Mimania is not a normal-looking man. In fact, he seems inhuman. I think it should be obvious now that Mr. Mimania represents the male urge to control girls, to keep them pure, virgins. If you don't know how Japanese private security guards dress, it's easy to miss that Mr. Mimania is a guard. He and other guards form a circle around the girls, men protecting the virtue of girls, keeping them virginal. Notice that Mr. Mimania is always wearing his guard uniform. He is a self-perceived guardian of girls' virginity. Is there virtue in keeping girls from being promiscuous? Well, maybe, but it is painfully obvious that Mr. Mimania does not have the best interests of Mima in mind. In real life, the savior complex of men who want girls to be virgins hides a desire to control them because a female should only have sex with one man, the right man, whatever that might mean. Yes, at first, Mr. Mimania defends Mima's virtue in the form of the violent heckler. It is heavily implied that Mr. Mimania attempted to murder the heckler. This scene goes by quickly and it's hard to read the English translation fast enough, but the violent heckler, named Tadashi Doi, was almost killed in a hit and run. It is implied that Mr. Mimania was responsible. Later, it appears that Mr. Mimania attempts the same hit and run on Mima. This is confusing if you're taking the film literally because where did he come from? Why would he try to kill Mima? The desire to protect the innocence of girls is often a hypocritical ruse of men who wish harm on girls. That's why. The filmmakers make it crystal clear that this promise of being a protector is a lie. When the magazine with nude photos of Mima comes out, he buys them all. He wants to stop men from seeing her nude and having her purity ruined, right? Well, he doesn't burn them or dump them in a trash bin, he keeps them for himself. The desire for girls to be virgins is a desire for the girl to be sexually exclusive with one man. In the US, girls who promise to be virgins sometimes go through a ceremony where they symbolically marry their fathers.
So you keep that on your finger, you're married to the Lord, and your father is your boyfriend, and we're gonna have fun together.
This is the best way to understand the film. The male characters represent the men who attempt to force girls and women into roles, and the female characters represent the reaction of girls and women to patriarchal control, specifically how girls respond to them while attempting the metamorphosis into woman. Yes, I know, it's a film made by a man, and here I am, another cis-hetero man explaining the meaning. If any of the women watching thinks I got something wrong, say so in the comments. I don't expect to make an essay like this and have all the women just be like... You'll notice that the men who attempt to force their will on Mima end up dead. Perfect Blue is usually sold as a murder mystery, which is smart since murder mystery looks better in a review than cryptic feminist Jeremiad. But what does it mean for an abstraction to kill another abstraction? If this is a murder mystery, then it's time we solved it. Yeah, just who did commit the murders? The movie implies that Mr. Mimania did it, and his attempt to rape and murder Mima seems to support that. However, there appears to be a revelation that Rumi was the real culprit, that she was responsible for all the murders. It's clear that Rumi killed Tadakoro, but we never see anyone kill Shibuya, and we clearly, unambiguously see Mima kill Murano. As I had stated, most people interpret this as subjective. Someone, the killer or Murano himself, hallucinates that the killer is Mima. That's really interesting. We see Mima kill Murano, but we convince ourselves that Mima did not kill Murano. What's going on? There is at least one clue that the murders themselves aren't meant to be taken literally: the absence of police action. If Perfect Blue is a murder mystery, then it is the only murder mystery where we never see anyone investigate the murders. When the letter bomb goes off, Tadakoro refuses to involve the police.
Don't you think we should have at least let the police know about it?
Mr. Tadakoro said not to. He doesn't want us to do anything about it.
But a crime was committed. And if you think about it, I could have been the one who opened that letter.
Everything's okay now. It was just a prank. Fortunately, Mr. Tadakoro wasn't badly hurt.
A prank? Tadakoro could have been seriously hurt. The note attached says, "is a warning, the next one will be real." Shouldn't they be taking this seriously? When Shibuya is murdered, we see a police car. Great. But no, it's a Satoshi Kon style fake-out. This cut serves no purpose except to call attention to the fact that we never see the police. Perhaps the filmmakers are trolling us, telling us that we'd have to be childish to think that the police are going to solve this. The TV mentions the police.
Police say Shibuya was stabbed multiple times with a sharp object, including his eyes and 65% of his body.
Police say that Murano died of multiple stab wounds. Police are considering a personal grudge as the motive and are looking into the connection between the two cases.
The off-screen police are doing a bang-up job. 2 murders with the same weapon and the same motivation, but none of the obvious suspects are interviewed. Then there is this weird anomaly.
Call the police! No, call an ambulance!
Call the police and an ambulance. Why the aversion to calling the police? Well, unlike Double Bind, we don't follow the investigation into whodunit, and that implies that the filmmaker don't think it's important for us to know whodunit. Perfect Blue doesn't follow the cops because Perfect Blue is not a murder mystery. Where does that leave us? Well, let's look at why instead of who. Why kill Shibuya, Murano, and Tadakoro? There is a thematic consistency to their murders. They cause Mima to be seen as a sex object, as something for the male gaze, and the killer removed their eyes. This is a revenge fantasy, violence used against the male gaze. The murders are the antithesis of the male gaze. That's right, the murders themselves are symbolic. If you insist on taking them literally and treating Perfect Blue like a murder mystery, you'll just be spinning your wheels. Again, Kon himself speaks to this.
I didn't focus on the crimes themselves, but on the person at their center, Mima.
Mima wants the male gaze destroyed because Mima represents girl who wants to become woman without being sexualized. Rumi wants the male gaze to be destroyed because she represents the urge to remain a girl, and the male gaze demands a steady stream of adult women who can be sexualized in a socially and legally acceptable way. It's the motivation that's important, not the empirical truth of who committed the murders.
珍しかった解釈ではですね、やっぱりあれはミマが犯人だったんだろうと。
私も一瞬だから最後これで終わった時にもしかして私の考えてることと違うのかなとか思ったりもさせられる。
はい、そこまで人をだまくらかして作っているつもりではなくてですね、鏡の中に映ってるってことは実は、ミマがやっぱり犯人だっていう意味だっていうふうに考える人がいてもそれは全然構わない。感想を聞かせてくれる人の中には、時折そんな、本当は騙してるんじゃないですかみたいな話はいただきますね。でそういう時にはしめと思うわけです。
Kon has hit the jackpot if we are confused. Being cryptic isn't a bug, it's a feature. Mimarin and Mr. Mimania have an irrational devotion to purity and virginity, so do they hate the male gaze? No. They believe that it is the woman who is responsible for the actions of men. It is irrational and hypocritical, of course. Mr. Mimania was going to rape Mima, getting his presumed reward for protecting her, but Mr. Mimania wouldn't have motive to kill Shibuya or Murano. He did attempt to kill the heckler, but the heckler didn't sexualize Mima, he just harassed her. Mr. Mimania steps into the role of male savior through this act of violence, but when confronted by men sexualizing Mima, he chooses to be violent towards Mima and only Mima.
It's that imposter. She keeps getting in my way. I don't know what to do. Mr. Mimania, thank you very much.
This shot of Mr. Mimania standing in the shadows is meant to imply that he is going to murder Shibuya. I think that this is a red herring. In other words, Mr. Mimania did not murder Shibuya, but we are meant to assume that he did because during the first act, the movie is a more traditional murder mystery, complete with misdirection. However, the murders do not advance a traditional linear narrative. The murders show us how people feel and are not meant to be literal murders. Rumi hates Tadakoro because the desire to remain a girl forever opposes the need for more women to sexualize. Mima hates Murano because the desire of a girl to become a woman without being sexualized hates the desire to sexualize woman. Both Rumi and Mima would hate Shibuya for these reasons, so we don't know who killed him. In a traditional murder mystery, it would serve the writer to reveal that all the murders were committed by a person whom we did not suspect, but in retrospect, we should have suspected. Perfect Blue follows the beats of a good murder mystery. Most people leave the theater thinking that Rumi committed all the murders, and then a few minutes later realize, no, wait, what? The director pulled a fast one. Why make a movie like this? You can say that Kon is trolling us with a movie that doesn't work, or he's just being confusing for the sake of being confusing, but I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt. We are being clued into the fact that there is a deeper meaning to all these events. Rumi ends up in an asylum, and we can infer that she was adjudicated mentally incompetent and held responsible for at least one murder, but we don't know that. Murder doesn't mean the same thing in Perfect Blue as it does in the real world. The external conditioning that men perform on women is removed from Mima's life. She ignores the male gaze. This is symbolized by the murder of 4 male characters. However, this does not end the film because the internalized conditioning remains. There's a pile of male corpses, but the final boss battle is between Mima and the female forces, Rumi and Mimarin. In a way, this is the brilliant twist ending that it appears to be on the surface, except the twist isn't that the real culprit is someone we never expected. No, the twist is that the rejection of the patriarchy doesn't just happen. There is a powerful residual harm remaining. Even if a woman rejects the external male conditioning, the internalized misogyny remains. This is the twist ending. Yes, Mima killed Murano, and no, it's not a literal murder. That is the only reasonable way to interpret this bonkers movie. But let's return to the topic of police investigation. The police are conspicuously absent in Perfect Blue, but Double Bind is a story focused on the police investigation. In fact, you could argue that the story within the story has the missing piece of the story. It's time to look at that. It won't surprise you to learn that Double Bind mirrors the events of Perfect Blue. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I am accustomed to this device called mise en beam because David Lynch employs it so often. In Twin Peaks, there is a soap opera called Invitation to Love that perfectly mirrors the show, even having a character be shot and killed simultaneous with his fictional counterpart. Yes, I know, Leo comes back to life in Season 2, but you have to ignore that to see the poignancy in this scene. In Lost Highway, the black and white movie we see in the end, likely a snuff film, has the same plot points as the real movie. And Inland Empire, wow, to even summarize how it uses mise en beam would double the length of this essay. But why does Kon use the device in Perfect Blue? Well, let's refer back to my thesis that Perfect Blue is about the difficulty of girls becoming women in a world where they are sexualized. They are damned if they do and damned if they don't. Hey, that's called a double bind. Let us look at the many ways that art imitates life in Perfect Blue. If you're losing the thread, remember, Mima is the ostensibly real actress and Yoko is the ostensibly fictional character. Sleazy men want Mima to be an actress, and this sleazy guy wants Yoko to be a model. Yoko is raped in a strip club, and Mima is almost raped in that exact same location, the set that is a real strip club in the diegesis of Double Bind. Dr. Asamiya advises Yoko about multiple personalities, and later Eric gives Mima the same advice. Dr. Asamiya suggests that Yoko has become a murderer, and Murano is watching the scene when he is murdered by Mima. We then see the scene of Yoko murdering a Murano counterpart superimposed over Mima killing Murano. We then see the shooting of this scene, the scene that Murano was watching in the past. Yeah, don't even try to make a timeline for this movie. Mima kills the Murano surrogate, and the murder is happening on the strip club stage, and the actor turns into Murano. Additionally, Mima actually does kill someone on this real location. The twist ending of Double Bind and the seemingly unreal twist ending of Perfect Blue are presented in parallel. This is the fake twist ending of Mima/Yoko being revealed as the killer, and all the weirdness being neatly explained away as delusion.
Dissociative identity disorder. In other words, multiple personality syndrome. All those crimes took place when she believed herself to be some other persona, a different personality.
Okay, let's review. At this point in the movie, if it was revealed that Mima had gone insane and committed the murders, it would have been a logical ending to the movie. However, this is 2/3 of the way through the movie. It's a double twist, a twist ending that is undone. In other words, we have a logical ending to this crazy story, and then Kon pulls the rug out from under us. The director pulled a fast one. Why? Again, Perfect Blue is not a murder mystery. The goal of the film is to dive into these complex issues of gender and trauma. It is the goal of Perfect Blue to not have a pat ending. Double Bind is in many ways the opposite of Perfect Blue. Double Bind is filled with murder mystery cliches, the transgender maniac, the bloody crime scene, the omnicompetent detective, and of course, the woman who has become homicidal through her bad experiences. Double Bind is not a realistic show. The lack of realism in Double Bind highlights the realism of Perfect Blue. In real life, there are no pat answers. There is no closure. Rarely do capable heroes, cops or otherwise, come in and save the day. When Mima starts to confuse her real world with the plot of Double Bind, yes, you can interpret that as a woman losing her sanity, but I think it makes more sense to view it as the messy details of life being contrasted with the simplicity of TV. So another way to put it is, the closure in Double Bind highlights the lack of closure in Perfect Blue. Mima wants things to be simple. That is the delusion. Yes, I think that the fish are important enough to get their own chapter. When Mima sees the fish, she realizes that she is not in her real room, and that she is in the fake Mima's room. On the literal level, this is a clever plot device. The same device was used in Steven Soderbergh's remake of Ocean's 11.
Does it say Bellagio on the vault floor?
No, it doesn't. We had it installed on Tuesday. The images we saw of those men robbing us was a tape. It was staged. Somebody made a duplicate of my vault. And what we saw on the monitor wasn't actually happening.
Wow, after watching Satoshi Kon films, it's actually kind of nice to have a character explain what's going on in lucid detail. Anyway, while the fish serve a plot point, they are clearly important metaphors.
つまりじゃあこのなぜ2匹かっていうのは大事ですよね。2人のミマ、バーチャルミマと、女優として、やっていこうとしている、変化しようとしているミマ。ミマの中にいる2人のミマがいわば生存競争をするわけですよね。というふうな展開になって。
The two remaining Mimas. This means that the other fish were possible futures for Mima. In other words, when Mima was young, there were multiple possibilities for her future. And as you get older, there are fewer and fewer as all those wonderful possibilities go away. Mima is at a specific branch point, pop idol or actress, be a girl forever or become an adult. The movie doesn't make explicit reference to the fact that you have more possibility branches when you're young, but let's remember that Mima's room, the real Mima's room, is filled with all of her childhood toys. Can you imagine such a thing? The fake Mima's room has the exact same toys, but it has all the fish. The fake room represents a time when all the possibilities are open. Fish represent possible futures. Additionally, we can understand just how destructive Mimarin is when this happens. The spirit of remaining a girl forever destroys all the possible futures for a woman. A living being dies when a possible future is destroyed by a present-day decision. The bright blue fish turns white, a color associated with death in Japan. Becoming an adult means losing something. When we see Mimarin and Rumi in the end, the two acting as a single entity, it has the feeling of a twist ending. Aha, you thought that the crazy stalker was the killer, but actually it was the surrogate sister and she's insane. As I had stated, that would actually be a pretty cool twist ending for a traditional murder mystery. But in Perfect Blue, the real revelation is that Rumi, the desire to return to childhood, and Mimarin, eternal childhood, are linked. We see Rumi, reality, in the mirror, and the phantom Mimarin, delusion, is seen in actuality. Rumi wants to return to the safety of childhood, and part of that is innocence, virginity, represented by singing pop idol songs. But when she pantomimes singing with a microphone, she gradually transitions into, well, either you see it or you don't. This is the hypocrisy of the patriarchal desire of certain men for girls to be virgins. It is a kink, not a moral stance. Since Mima represents the desire of a girl to become an adult, the desire to return to girlhood, and the eternal girl must kill her. This is why a bloody fight commences. The ending is a fight between the reality of becoming a woman and the fantasy of remaining a girl. Since Mimarin is magical because she represents a fantastical notion, Mima's only defense is to expose the unreal nature of Mimarin. This will cause Mimarin to be Rumi in actuality. First, she chokes Mimarin. Mimarin turns into Rumi temporarily, and then back to Mimarin once she can breathe again. In the end, Mima removes the wig, a major component of the Mimarin delusion. I guess that the wig is a girlish hairstyle and Rumi's short hair is the cut of a serious and responsible adult. This happens after Mima says this.
You're the imposter! I'm not gonna take this anymore!
Mimarin calls Mima an imposter over and over again, but this is the first time that Mima challenges it. Removing the wig is a declaration that Mimarin is not real. Rumi risks death to get the wig back, impaling herself on the glass. She sees her shattered reflection on the broken glass. The last time that Rumi sees Rumi in the mirror, the delusion is killing her. She completely reverts to Mimarin, a bleeding and possibly dying Mimarin, when a truck comes. The truck serves two purposes: a callback to Mr. Mamania's vehicular homicide attempt, and of course the headlights remind Mimarin of the spotlight that she has been craving over and over again in multiple scenes. The delusion of eternal girlhood must die for a girl to become a woman, right? Not so fast. Mima saves Rumi and Rumi lives. First, by not having the ostensible real killer die, the audience's expectations are thwarted. No closure for you. Secondly, Mima wants the desire to return to girlhood to exist. She just doesn't want it to dominate her life. In the end, Rumi is in an asylum. In a movie where people and places are symbolic, I think that the best way to interpret this is that the woman is keeping the girlish whimsy alive, but contained. Now, Rumi is in actuality, and Mimarin is in the mirror. Remember, Mima doesn't bear a grudge against Rumi.
Thanks to her, I am who I am today.
That's right. It's the things a woman does as a girl that makes her the woman she becomes. Mima is keeping a piece of the fantasy with her, just like the literal Mima kept all of her childhood toys in her room. Kon might be saying that this is how a girl becomes a self-actualized woman, or maybe he's saying that, even if it's unhealthy, this is the decision that women make. Regardless, the desire to be an adult is in charge now. Mima is a successful actress like her hero Eri. She must be famous if the nurses don't even believe it's her.
Maybe she's just a lookalike.
Is Mima so famous that there are Mima lookalikes, like Elvis impersonators? Actually, this is a bad translation. She says that they look alike, calling them niteru, similar. I think it's funny that Mima is so famous that there are Mima impersonators, but that was not the intention. The point is that Mima's identity is still in question in the outside world, but not to Mima.
No, I'm the real thing.
There has been so much analysis of this final shot, but I find it interesting that no one has pointed out the fact that Mima is directly addressing the camera. Why would this happen? It's because Mima knows that the nurse's line has made us, the real audience, doubt the verisimilitude of this ending. After all, we've been tossed around, untethered through nightmares and paradoxes. We're the ones that need to be convinced. At the very least, the last line, spoken through the mirror, confirms that Mima is a self-actualized adult. Kon seems to be signing off on that.
あれは鏡の中で言ってるんだから絶対嘘だっていう意味ですよねみたいな話をされたことがあります。別にそこまで人をだまくらかして作っているつもりではなくてですね、今は一段階大人になったと。以前よりは確固とした自分を持てたのは間違いない。言葉を変えれば成長したと。
Whatever awaits her in the future, she has gotten through this ordeal and, well, good for her. That's the real thing. Perfect Blue is a very confusing movie, but most women would say that trying to transition from girlhood to adulthood was a very confusing time because they got a lot of mixed signals from society. So here's a film that gives us the same mixed signals, giving us evidence that one person was the killer and contrary evidence, moving us from one reality to another, doing cuts on action that take us to a different time and place. Women don't get easy answers from society, so Perfect Blue is a movie with no easy answers. Yes, it would be nice if films like this were made by women, but I think Satoshi Kon deserves credit for what he did. Perhaps there is an advantage to having a film like this made by a man and copying the tropes of popular anime. Maybe men and boys who would otherwise not be receptive to an essay about the trauma of being a woman will watch and appreciate it. Hopefully in the future it will be women who make films like this. Women will be telling their stories and it will be the men who say,
勉強になります。